Hello, everybody. This is Christopher Sneed, and you are listening to American High Road. This is my new podcast, and we'll talk about all sorts of things, and I'm really excited. I hope to have guests on, and I want to talk about a little bit about politics. I want to talk about philosophies. I want to talk about entertainment. I want to talk about good food, good places, good things going on. I want to talk about bad things going on if we need to talk about it. So with that in mind, the very first topic seems the most appropriate. I'm going to talk about the First Amendment, because at the very heart of this podcast, the First Amendment pretty much sums up what this is about. So with that said, let's get started. Are you pissed about Kaepernick taking a knee? Are you annoyed when an actor uses an award show to voice political opinions or political issues? Have you been to a concert and thought just sing a song when the lead singer goes into a speech about injustice or something? We all get horrified when someone commits a far too common mass shooting, right? And how tired are you of seeing social media get speckled with anti or pro-Trump posts? This leaves one final question. Are we essentially disrespecting free speech and therefore America's very core by trying to get these people to stop talking or stop displaying or expressing themselves instead of just listening to comprehend what they have to say? I want to briefly explore the foundation of the First Amendment, kind of ponder what we are doing now and how I think it's wrong, and explain how this ties into this show. Now, can you imagine what it must have been like before America gained its independence? It's no wonder that free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press are all included at the top of the constitutional amendments. But when you think about what it must have been like under Great Britain's rule, royalty had always been combative when it came to anything negative said or displayed about it in public, and how they conducted themselves. So their objective was to put a stop to it. Most of the time, there was always some sort of punishment or something, some new law that prevented people from being able to get together and discuss issues or concerns. Now, we are a country born out of its own oppression, which is funny that we would turn around and repeatedly enslave and oppress others throughout history, but that is another story. We'll save that for another show. The very heart of why we became independent was the frustration of not being heard, the unfair and counterproductive norm of not being able to openly share information and thoughts. This is how they kept control of the people and allowed unethical decisions to continue, or what people deemed to be unethical, unfair. They did this by building dams in the flow of information. In turn, we ended up holding our own demonstrations that were invasive and at times destructive, but always very public. This led to the greatest type of protest, war. And eventually, through all of these protests, through all of these organized demonstrations, we became an independent country. Now, over the years since my birth, we've inched our way closer and closer to a society unwilling to listen and put our egos aside to take the time to try to understand each other, whether we agree or not. Yet we have a very strong opinion of our own that we always want to share with someone at some point, or sometimes even worse, not sharing at all because we're afraid. Isn't fear at the heart of most of these reactions today when people express themselves? People are afraid of getting their minds changed, of admitting that they're wrong, of having to change their entire philosophy, which is understandable. Afraid of their less than flattering, deep-rooted flaws being brought to light. We seem to be most afraid on the surface of losing. And if you don't believe me, you can look at social media. I mean, really look at the arguments. We don't seem to be looking for the truth, just justification or proof that we're right. I've been on Facebook and made several observations, and hopefully no one gets offended or bothered by what I have to say. Hopefully they won't be quote unquote snowflakes about this, because it was an open conversation we had and it was public, and I still respect these people's opinions, and I still respect them as people. But I made some observations on there. The first thing, during a post about Kaepernick, his protest, one group or one side, however you want to classify that, they claimed that he was a hypocrite for never putting his money where his knee was, which, don't get me wrong, that's really clever, and I actually liked it and wish I agreed with it, because it just sounds, it's funny. But that group never shared or admitted they were wrong on any of the information that was provided, that provided strong evidence that the froed out football player had donated hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was somewhere around 800,000. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, or I'll look it up later, but I think that's right. To various military, educational, youth-oriented programs, things that the goal was to make society better. That group didn't bother sharing that, even though they were very engaged in disproving Kaepernick or diminishing him, which is their right. But when we started bringing up certain facts that might lead to a different opinion, they had no interaction with it at all. Another one was with Nike. After Nike chose him to be their spokesperson, they didn't share a comment on the post, because a lot of people were talking about how Nike had horrible labor practices, and it was real hypocritical of Kaepernick to even sign on with them because they were doing all these horrible things. However, the same group of people didn't bother to share a later post that explained that Nike had, in fact, put a lot of effort into improving their labor practices. They put a lot of money and time and listened to the complaints and had successfully turned those conditions around. No one bothered to respond to those posts or to say simply, "Oh, I didn't know that. I was wrong." Now, not everyone. I mean, I have seen occasionally, like during all of this recent hubbub, I think I saw one person who went, "Oh, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that information." That was not the response of most of the other people. Most of the other people just didn't say anything. They pretty much bowed out of the conversation. Now, not to be biased or to take sides, because I do not believe in taking sides in the political party. I think that that's counterproductive for me. But so that you know that I don't choose sides in this political playground fight, the other group, or what we call the other group, didn't share or comment when I posted how one of the organizations that Kaepernick donated to was named after a cop killer. And I looked this information up and verified it before I posted it. I try to do that all the time. But in this particular instance, people didn't bother sharing that information. I had very few responses to this revelation about Kaepernick and his money. And this isn't really about right or wrong with Kaepernick. We're talking about the First Amendment. So if you have responses or anything, remember, this isn't about Kaepernick and his kneeling. This is about First Amendment and how we don't respect it. But people weren't looking for answers online. They were looking for validation. I'm going to repeat that again. People were not looking for answers. They were looking for validation. When I reposted these things or engaged in friendly debates with smart and generally nice people, I was looking for an answer to prove or disprove the information that I had or had come across, or at least understand why they felt the way that they did. But instead of getting a conclusion to those things, instead of answering my questions and us getting to some sort of crossroad, When we reached an apex of the discussion, or I asked a very specific, detailed question that didn't make sense to me, they changed the subject, or they copped out by saying things like, let's agree to disagree. They didn't want to finish, basically, even though we had this momentum going. Now, I have no problem with changing my mind. I've done it before. But I've done it before and I've done it many times. I don't have a problem with that. I think once I'm corrected on something, then I'm no longer wrong. So I don't mind that. But more and more I see people saying some variation of, I don't need anyone telling me what to think, or no one is going to change my mind. When did that become a bad thing? Especially if you are wrong about something. When did it become a bad thing to simply go, I didn't have this information before? We're embarrassed by being wrong, I think, or by thinking we might be wrong. But all of these things, the I don't need anyone telling me what to think, or changing the subject, or let's agree to disagree, these all feel like roadblocks that people are putting up because they're afraid of losing. This type of communication blocking goes against everything that gives free speech its value. What is the point of expressing anything if no one is willing to listen objectively with intent to understand, to process things? What is the point of expressing anything ever? That's my second question, I guess, or my next question. The first question, when and where is the right time and place to express national concerns? And the second question, what is the point of expressing anything? In the case of this football player, people claimed he was being disrespectful to the military and to the flag. First, he wouldn't have done it if a vet hadn't suggested it as a respectful way to protest. Secondly, he was very clear what it was about. Yet other people chose to make it about something else. If you went and put a purple sign in your front yard to protest, abortion, or, kicking kittens, I can't decide on my own that it means you wish to hurt the royal family, or that it means you are a cannibal. I can't just decide that because that's what I think it means. You've told me. Me doing that would be a willful distortion of your freedom to express with the intent to put a halt to your First Amendment right. Me saying those things publicly and shaming you, I hate to use that term because it's used so much, but it seems somewhat appropriate here. If you shame people for expressing themselves, not debating the issue, but shaming them for expressing the issue in general at any point, especially if it's something that means something to America, then you are essentially trying to stop them from exercising their First Amendment right. To make it more clear, expressing yourself in a way that pressures someone else into giving up their freedom of expression is an attack on the First Amendment. That's how I see it. In the example that I mentioned about the sign, I'm telling the world I ultimately want your sign removed, and that this prevents you from feeling safe and free to express yourself, to express your protest of abortion. This is very similar to some of what Great Britain did to cause our founders to seek independence. In this example, we don't want to be Great Britain. We want to be better than that. We want to remember why we're where we are now, why we have the amendments that we have, why the Constitution includes that. And we don't do it by trying in an indirect way to stop people from expressing themselves. And I know people want to say, oh, he can express himself and I have the right to express myself about what he expressed, and we're all going to express things. And yes, everyone should have a reaction, but the reaction in the people that claim it has nothing to do with what he is protesting, they aren't expressing a different point of view than him. They've pretty much said that. People aren't protesting what he's talking about. They're not upset, so they claim. They're not upset that he's protesting unarmed black people getting shot. They say they're upset about when and where. So therefore, they're complaining about him exercising his First Amendment right. They're burning perfectly good Nikes that they've already given money to the company for in order to protest him using his freedom of expression. Despite this not being about vets or America as a country, people still use that as a defense for the death threats in the many protests that they do against Kaepernick. They say it isn't about what he's protesting. It's not about what he's protesting, but how. A silent protest that doesn't prolong a football game or use violence. Again, that might be tripping off into another subject. And I don't want to harp on him. It's just the most recent in a long string of expressions that large groups of people seem to have a problem with. Whether it's him on the football field or Meryl Streep during an award ceremony, there are people that are just constantly complaining. And some of those people are the people that like to throw the term snowflake around and talk about everyone else complaining all the time. But we can't discuss or process the issues at hand because someone is always making the where and when more important than the lives related to the protest. That's my other problem. People will go on and say, oh, but this protest, it's making it about him, and he's not focusing on the issues that he claims he's protesting. He's not doing that. We're doing that by arguing about that. Like, that has become more important than the dead people, than the survivors of victims who have been involved in shootings, whether it be police or minorities. I bring all of this up because this series is meant to honor the First Amendment. I will talk about funny things like Snoop Dogg's new cookbook, social things like public education, political things like the president, and insignificant things like any member of the Kardashian clan. Well, maybe I won't talk about them. But in honoring the First Amendment, I will respect different opinions and give consideration to anything anyone has to say. In fact, I encourage it if it is done with thought and respect to others. For a level playing field, this means that any guests that I may have on or comments that are posted that involve any petty name calling of anyone, and this includes whether it be liberals or conservatives or the president or anyone, those will be removed. You have a complaint about people, you have concerns about people, you have disagreements with people, you want to call out an error or a lie, absolutely. But I've had my fair share of reading what equates to verbal farts, which is explosive, shallow comments that generally stink up the place. I have no problem being proven wrong, and I welcome it. Once my mistake is corrected, as I said before, with facts, then I no longer have to be wrong about it. And I would hope anyone listening could bring that same philosophy to the table as well. I want to laugh, I want to think, I want us to move closer to agreement, or if not agreement, then at least respect, get closer to respect that comes from understanding each other. That's how I want to honor the very first and probably most important amendment to the Constitution. And if you're truly proud to be an American, which I am, and love this country, then it should not be an obstacle for you. Now, if you have a topic you want to discuss, or you want to bring up a fact that I overlook, or just want to have an opinion, or if you want to be a guest, which would be awesome, especially if you have different of opinion, you have questions, information, any of that, please shoot me a message, shoot me an email at whatchaholdin@gmail.com. That link or that email will be in the description as well, but it's WhatChuholdin. And trust me, I have family, I have friends, I have coworkers who are conservative, I have friends, family, and I don't know if I have coworkers that are on the liberal side. I don't care. I don't care if you're independent. I don't care what side you identify with. I don't care about any of that. I just want to have a discussion and get back to a place that at least I used to think America was more an example of, which is where we can discuss things and listen to things and try to move forward together. Until then, until our next episode, if you are a person of faith, please pray for this country. I would say to pray for that we find peace and resolution among our own citizens, because honestly, I don't think we can be a positive influence in the world if we can't maintain peace in our own home. So if you're not a person of faith, then just put some good vibes out into the world. Go do some good things. Go encourage some people. That's something we can all do, no matter what faith or background or anything. And let's work towards some things instead of against them. So until then, like I said, shoot me a message. I will try to respond to certain messages. If somebody leaves a really good comment or question, I will try to answer those or respond to those in the following podcast or following show. So let's start some dialogue. Until next time, again, my name is Chris Sneed, and you've been listening to American High Road.